What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today, we got a Best Served Podcast 171. We're talking improving food services with Malcolm Snead of Creede School District. Malcolm, thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me, Jensen.
All right, so this channel, Mondays, if you've been paying attention over the last few weeks, Best Served Young, we're focused on youth education, school gardens, lunch programs, and Malcolm, perfect for this. You are the Director of Food Services at Creede School District down in Creede, Colorado. So tell everybody, very specifically, Creede School District, what you're doing, the work of improving food services, kind of what does your day-to-day look like? What's happening in Creede?
Well, we are a very small school district. We're a K through 12 school. And so we have anywhere from 100 to like 85 kids at any time in the school district. So it makes it really easy for me to be creative. I have, since I started in the food service program, have been trying to go as much scratch-made food as I possibly can and stop buying anything pre-made or anything that has a lot of artificial flavors or preservatives in it. We've also been working very closely with the Valley Roots Food Hub in order to buy as much local meat and produce as we can whenever we have the chance to, because around here in Colorado, once the winter comes around, the best fresh produce that we have access to is like potatoes and beets and things like that.
Yeah, which we love as well, but it's not quite the same as having an apple or a cucumber in the kitchen. I completely understand that. Take us back. So when did this work really start for you, looking at improving food service systems, getting into the schools, educating and feeding our youth, such important work? When did that start for you?
Well, I started as the food service director here in Creede 5 years ago. And when I started my first year, I just kept it status quo and, fed the kids what my predecessor fed them. But then it got to a point where from talking to staff members and students, they were craving different food. And so I have a chef's background. And so I thought, well, I can work within the perimeters that the government sets down for me and still be able to bring them great new flavors, but still work in the perimeters that the government wants me to work under.
Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned chef background before that. Talk about that, the transition from going from chef in more the prototypical sense that you and I came up in to then saying, I want to apply my passion, my skill, and apply that to, again, food service systems. How did that come about?
Well, that came about pretty easily as far as helping me create. It gave me the knowledge and the background in order to adapt the recipes that I'm used to serving in restaurants and things like that for food service program. And it also the most challenging part was cutting out fats and things like that, because in the chefing world, I mean, fat's flavor, and so you got to figure out a way in order to cut salt and cut fat and and still make it taste really good to where the kids will actually want to eat it. And that was one of my biggest challenges right there. And it's still a challenge.
We come up, there's not foie gras, caviar. You're not mounting every sauce with butter. I completely understand. Yet still, I like the idea because it's a challenge. Like having two young sons now, I think about that a lot. The challenge to create something that's dynamic and exciting from a chef perspective, and also is enticing and safe and adventurous for the kids, right? It's like this balancing act. So I think the thing that I always think about is the challenge. As a chef, you love to be challenged, and it's just a different challenge. It's not the challenge that was set in front of us, say, early in our careers or at culinary school or as you're coming up in the restaurants, but I really like that. I'd love for you to talk to that audience because that's very much our audience. We think of sometimes like going to cook in a cafeteria setting as like, that's not me as a chef, yet everything I'm seeing and hearing and all the things that I'm talking to people about is like, there may be more Colorado fresh produce in some schools than there are in some restaurants in Colorado. So I'm fascinated in that. Is this a good career path? Is this a place that chefs should be putting their attention to potentially be looking at as part of their own paths?
5 years ago, I would have told you, no, don't do it. But now I like, like we were talking about the challenge, and it's so rewarding getting to work with the kids, and expose them to new flavors and cuisines from all over the world, that I love it. And I would talk to any kind of chef going into culinary school or coming out, and be like, this might not be where you want to be right out of culinary school, but just give it a try, because I know it'll surprise you, and you'll find things in it for sure that you love, and that will make you want to keep doing it every day. I mean, because every day I love getting up and going to work, and getting to hear the kids come into the cafeteria during lunchtime, and then when they come to drop off their trays, seeing like the tray just being empty, and then them being like, that's the best thing I've ever tasted. Please make that again. And you're like, I will for sure. It's a great feeling. And you don't really ever get that working in, fancy restaurants and stuff. I mean, you might put out a plate that is a showstopper, and then that person's going to take an Instagram photo of it and then complain to you that it's cold because they let it sit there so long while they took Instagram photos.
Oh, I completely agree. That is hilarious. Also, the feeling that you get when you see clean plates come back to the kitchen, right? There's something about that. Like, you just know you nailed it. And so I love that. Again, you're connecting the dots because you still are getting that emotional high from being able to deliver. And it happens to be our youth, which I've been saying this, and I will say this every show of Best Served Young. For anybody in the restaurant industry, investing in any opportunity for kids, for children, for youth to be excited about food is so important, because if kids are only eating processed foods right now, we're not investing in them eating fresh and dynamic flavors and ingredients that we're excited about as a chef. In 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, there's not going to be a market for the kind of food you want to cook, because the market is going to demand more of the salty, fatty things that are processed. So I very much believe that investing, even if you're not in food service, if you're in restaurants, investing in supporting the youth and having them eat exciting food, fresh produce, local products, it matters. It really, really matters. So, and I know you see that play out. I want to make sure and touch on this. Rainey, who I want to give props to on basically every show, because she's awesome and doing a great job of being a connector of humans, mentioned that you were doing ramen with the kids. And it blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, ramen in a cafeteria setting with kids, it almost didn't compute. And then I was like, and I love everything about it. So talk about that as kind of a model for what you can do to connect the dots between culinary, chef, youth, and fitting into the parameters, as you mentioned, that can be stringent, but those parameters, ramen. Talk to me about ramen. I'm excited.
Okay. Well, it was one of those things that one of the kids suggested it to me, and I, after doing some research and some planning, I was able to work it out to where, through the Valley Roots Food Hub, I got some beef bones, and I made my own beef broth with that. Using that and like a bunch of other fresh produce like ginger that I got from those guys, and would make the broth like that. I would get daikon radishes to add to it. Just any kind of meat I could find. I've been turning the kids on to stuff like oxtail that I would put in the ramen. I've been turning them on to like beef cheeks and things like that. And so we would have I'd give them meat options. But explain to them, as they're coming through the line, like, this is traditionally, it's not done quite like this, but the flavors are all still there. And the kids love it. I mean, it makes the lunch line run a little slow because there are a lot of options for the kids. Right. But like for the elementary kids, I just toss all the veggies in there, and then they get an option of the meat that they'd like with it, and then so that way that they're still getting their veggies and their, the noodles, and then pour the hot ramen broth on top of it. And yeah, I mean, the kids, it surprised me the first time how many of them were like, that was one of the best lunches I've ever had at a school, and even the staff. I mean, one of the teachers took a picture of their ramen bowl and was posting it on Facebook. And so by the time I got off of work that day, everyone in town was like, "What? Why can't we get ramen?" You know? And I'm like, "Well, come to school lunch, I guess."
This is blowing my mind, Malcolm. You basically checked every box of what a restaurant's about. Like, you want to get introduced to new cuisines. You know, ramen so hot right now in restaurants in every market. And then your local products, you're finding those products. You're introduced. I mean, I know cooks who've never had oxtail and beef cheek before, right? You're introducing them. And then you mentioned the Instagrammable moment. You're creating Instagrammable moments at a school. I just think that is so dynamic, and what a way to get the community to buy in. And we see this a lot now where kids are educating their parents on foods. And so all of a sudden the kid says, "Mom, Dad, have you ever had beef cheek, oxtail, fresh ginger, ramen?" And we know that kids are the best salespeople in the world. Like the toy industry has proven that time and time again, I think, and the food industry from a process standpoint has definitely done that. I think absolutely there's an opportunity. So let's talk about the kids. Like, when you see those kids and they are tasting an ingredient that beef cheek seems like weird. It seems like it's not on normal people's tables day in and day out, right? And there's all of that potentially. What's it like? What's the conversation like? What are the kids, how are they interacting? I'm fascinated because I have no idea. Like, I think it's such a unique concept.
Well, the big rule, all the kids will tell you, especially the elementary ones, they know that the number one rule in the cafeteria is don't yuck on my yum. You don't come through my line talking about, "Ew, that looks like this or this," until you've given it a try. I don't want to hear you complaining about it or anything like that. And if you're not willing to give it a try, then I always tell them, like, "Well, what are you going to be like in the future? You know, are you just going to, because something looks scary, are you just not going to try it? And then, you know, like, you're going to have a life of just, you know, of just going through the same routine and never doing anything new if you don't take a step out." I mean, one of the things we serve them a lot is purple potatoes. And it took them a very long time to trust me that the potato tastes exactly like a regular potato. And I always joke with them. I'd say, "Well, you think it's going to taste too purple?" And they're like, "Well, yeah." And so it took me a while to get them to trust me. As far as, you know, another thing I would always let them know is that I wouldn't serve you guys anything that I wouldn't eat myself. You know, like, I eat the same lunch that I serve to you guys. So if I'm not going to eat it, I'm not going to make you guys eat it. And that's another thing that helped build a lot of trust. Because I've had a lot of kids that come from other school districts that say, "Oh no, our cafeteria workers would never eat the food that they serve us," you know? And I'm like, well, that should be a good sign to you that you don't probably want to eat it either. You know, if they don't want to put it in their bodies, you probably don't want to put it in your body.
Yeah, that's a clear red flag there. Obviously, I think that's such an important thing. The interaction with kids, they're so open, yet they're also very skeptical. So I like the dynamic that you're talking about. And trust is huge. Trust and confidence, we talk about that within the dynamic of teams within a restaurant all the time. We talk about that with your guests and creating trust and confidence in them, so that it allows the opportunity to give them something that they maybe have never had before. And so I like the fact that purple potato is a beautiful, like, segue opportunity. They love potatoes. It's purple. All right, that's a little weird. Does it taste too purple? I think that's a hilarious interaction. And then they go, all right, I get it. It tastes like a potato. And it allows them the opportunity to say, well, what's the other thing that's kind of like something, but not quite? It's like, it creates the opportunity for that trust and confidence. I really, really appreciate that. We mentioned the parameters. I want to talk about that a little bit, because when I heard you were making ramen, I was like, who's letting them make ramen at school? Like, it seems like that would be a freedom that you wouldn't potentially have in the school cafeteria setting. So talk about that. Is that unique to Creede? Is that something you really had to fight for? How are you able to make ramen in something that seems very, you know, a lot of people know, like, schools are going very much to IW, individually wrapped products. Like, there's a lot of migration towards and away from what you're talking about. So why are you able to do what you're doing there in Creede?
Well, like I said, we're a small school district, and so we don't have a lot of students, and it gives me chances to unleash my creativity like that. Here lately, because of COVID, I've had to, restructure things and rethink ways of serving meals to the kids. Because like things like the ramen bowl or the build your own anything that I used to do for them, I can't really do that anymore, because salad bars and build your own type
Right.
stations are all out of the picture. So right now I'm having a hard time, repicturing and considering things. But my thing was like once the students started telling their parents what I was serving them here, I started getting support from the parents.
Yes.
It made it to where it made it so much easier for me to be able to experiment with them and to offer them food that they might not even know how to pronounce,
Yeah.
but or know what in the world it is, but they're still willing to give it a try. I mean, another big thing on the trust level is because we are a small school, I know all the kids on a first name basis.
Yeah.
And so that really, really helps to develop a rapport to where I can talk to them. And, I know the things that they kind of will eat and really won't, but I'm like, and I can give them that nudge to give it a try and things like that. So, I mean, those the personal relationship with the students and, us being a really tight knit community helps it to where I have the ability to experiment like that.
Love it. So let's talk about what is happening right now. So as you mentioned, now some of the things, salad bar is the top of line thing when people are like, here's an opportunity to get greens, to get vegetables, to get fresh produce, to get raw foods into kids. And the salad bar has been a big leader in bringing a lot of those products to bear at schools. Now that clearly is not an option right now. You mentioned kind of some of the build your own stuff from the ramen, not an option. Where are you going now? Because I know that for you, it's most important to get the kids trying new things, having the fresh vegetables, having the fresh products. Where are you at now? What are a couple of the things that you're working on to try and still have that level without some of the dynamics that were leaders in the way that you were able to deliver that to the kids?
Well, I've been experimenting with some grab and go salads, where it's more than just a lettuce. It's it's more on the line of a garbanzo bean salad with broccoli and carrots and bell peppers and things like that, and then a little bit of chicken in there, to where they have an option of getting some fresh vegetables and some fresh fruits and things like that and still and not have to go through a salad bar or worry about that. I'm also been looking at a lot of basically like rice and like meat or vegetable dish, like a curry or a dora wat, which is an Ethiopian dish, to be able to serve them and to keep them open to different cuisines from the rest of the world, but still, having to keep with the COVID perimeters because we've already been talking about it a lot with the administration that we're probably going to have to serve lunch in the classroom. So everything will be in some kind of container, and then we take it to them and hand it out. But I want it to still be adventurous for them and healthy. But yeah, work with make sure nobody gets sick and everybody gets to stay in class and stay healthy.
So big challenge there, right? From a couple perspectives that I see, and I want you to be able to articulate this a little bit from your perspective. So additional need for processing, because filling a hotel pan with all of your your items much easier than filling individual containers. It takes a lot more work goes into that. A lot more people power potentially is one thing. And then cost of containers. Again, you're reusing a lot of those containers that you had on the salad bar. Now you're doing individual use, utensils, things like that. So talk about that. Clearly, additional resources needed, cost associated with that. And we already know how strapped a lot of food systems are when it comes to the cafeteria model, as far as how much money you have to play with to be able to get food to the kids. So touch on that a little bit. Clearly that's a needed challenge. What I want basically, Malcolm, is for us to know the challenges so that we understand the need to further support. And if that's support from volunteers, if that's support from further funding, if that's a support from regulation, I'd love to get from your perspective some of the needs that you have with these additional challenges you're facing.
Well, like you said, it does take a lot more time to serve out of to make individual lunches for everybody in the building. And in our food service program, it's myself and one other person. Shouts out to Jackie Stone. She's my kitchen manager. But we
Right.
do everything. We do the cleaning, we do the prepping, we do the cooking, we do the serving. So it has made it very, very much of a challenge for us to get everything done in a limited amount of time in order to serve it. And then the other challenge is making sure it's hot and fresh, because coming out of a hotel pan, you're pretty much guaranteed that it's going to be hot. Whereas to go containers or things like that, I mean, the moment it hits the pan, it's starting to cool down, and the quality of the product is just increasingly becoming less and less. One of the problems that we've always had was in most school food service programs, you're not allowed to give food to go. So before COVID, we weren't even allowed to have to go containers in our kitchen. So it wasn't ever something that we had budgeted for as far as our annual budget for, like food and supplies and things like that. And now it's a huge part of the budget. And if you're someone that's environmentally focused like I am, I'd like to get, not plastic and not styrofoam. The paper ones are great, but they cost like twice as much as the styrofoam. And when, like you said, you're already strapped for cash, and this isn't something that's ever been thought of to be put into the budget, you are basically trying to figure out ways that you can cut costs one way in order to be able to afford all the single-use items in to-go containers.
So important. And this is why I ask these questions. This is why I'm so compelled to have as many conversations with as many humans doing good work as possible at every level of hospitality, restaurants, food and beverage, the food system, because my brain's already going. We have on a guest from Eco Products who does compostable to-go containers and silverware, plateware, tableware, stuff like that. And they're going to be on the show. I'm absolutely going to check in with them on what's happening in that space, if there's opportunity to support, because those are exactly the kind of things. They're working on some composting initiatives as well. So I think there's some opportunity there. So this is what we need. We need to have these conversations so we can understand the challenges, so we can meet those challenges, connect more people to the conversation who can then do some good. So I really appreciate you kind of pointing that out, because I didn't realize that there was no to-go containers, whatever. I just figured you were getting more of them. So you're not only navigating the work that goes into that, but now all of a sudden you have to go into kind of purchasing mode and be scouting different products and looking at different things and getting samples of stuff and then understanding the impact that those have downstream. Like, that's a lot of work and effort that goes into that. And you haven't had to deal with that before. So talk about a pivot. That's pretty major. So I can appreciate that. Well, Malcolm, you can count on me to connect some more people to the conversation for sure. And I just know that good people connecting good people is the whole premise of this show. So really appreciate it. Any last thoughts you want to leave us with? This is a really great conversation.
My last thoughts is just everybody out there that's doing this work, keep doing it. Like you were saying earlier, the people that benefit from this the most are going to be the kids, man. And that's the whole reason I started doing it and trying to do stuff from scratch, is because I want the kids out there today to have healthier lives when they get to be my age, and this is the way to start it, is to start them young.
That's right. I really, really believe that. You give a kid a vegetable, you could change their life, change their trajectory completely. You're living that. Malcolm Snead, really appreciate you being on the show. I'm going to let you go, get back to work, and we see you're at the school. Appreciate everything that you're doing, and I'm sure you and I have a lot more to talk about down the road. So take care.
All right. Anytime you want to talk again, just let me know.
All right. Cheers. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks, Jensen.
All right, Malcolm Snead, Best Served Podcast 171, Improving Food Services. I mean, that's a very vanilla title there. I mean, really, it's changing lives. I really, really believe that the work that's happening within schools is fundamental to everything that happens. The kids that are moved by ramen, it changes their trajectory. I truly, truly believe that. The openness that they have now to different foods seems like a little thing, but it is a microcosm for being open to new ideas, to new people, to new cultures, to new ways of thinking. And we all know that that openness is absolutely needed. We can all use more of it. I learned so much from the openness or the pushback that I get from my two young sons. And I know that there's a lot of learning that can be happened with what's happening, that can be gleaned from what's happening in school. So I appreciate that. And yeah, we're going to have a lot more conversations. Best Served Young, again, July, August, September. We're going to have this channel going and see where it goes from there. Just our opportunity support. So check in every Monday for the foreseeable future. We're going to have Best Served Young focused on youth education, school gardens, lunch programs, ramen on the cafeteria line. And I hope there's a way that the kids can continue to have ramen into the future, even though those build your own bars are no longer available. Thank you. As always, great show today. Great channel. Good stuff happening here. All right, everyone. That is it for the day. I appreciate you as always.